Thank you, Dr. Pham, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I think Lauro, you're in good morning. Dr. Pham, I'm very happy that you made the introductions. Thank you very much for that. I'm very honored. Let me now open my slides and also acknowledge the people in the call. I see familiar names like Dr. Kalimag, Dr. David, Dr. Millie. I can't read everyone, but thank you for joining the call. I hope that after this call, we can apply some of the approaches that I will talk about in our workplace. Oh, there's Dr. Julius Migrino and Dr. Jen David. Okay, so the topic assigned to me tonight was a practical approach to digital health transformation, a guide to developing countries. For those of you who are new to AeHIN, we were formed in 2011 when there was a meeting in Hoi An, Vietnam, of Ministries of Health around Asia, and we talked about the challenges of health information systems interoperability and the difficulties that we were all facing. So together with several countries, we formed a group called Asia EHealth Information Network so that we can learn from each other and show each other our successes and also our failures. We realized that there was no conference or group that talked about the challenges or the failures, and we thought that that's the real flavor of AeHIN, that we would be friends, comfortable with sharing with each other our challenges and our failures because we thought that that was the best way to prevent our other friends from experiencing the same pain and the hardship that they might face. And if we shared our failures with them, they would have better chances at avoiding those failures. So my talk today is based on a chapter that I submitted to Dr. Leo Selly. The book is entitled Leveraging Data Science for Global Health. You can download the full ebook from Springer. And inside this book is a chapter that I wrote on the practical approach to digital transformation, a guide to health institutions in developing countries. And the context behind this chapter was people kept asking about digital transformation and wanted to find out, so how do you do this? How do you start digital transformation? Is there a beginning? Is there an end? Is there a way to find out whether I'm actually moving forward or am I moving backward? So I developed this framework. It's not a perfect framework, but at least I'm offering it tonight for discussion and for comments. And we have very prestigious speakers from all around Asia to tell us more about their perspectives about this approach. So our challenge right now, and this was, similar to the challenges we faced in 2011 when we formed AeHIN, was that there was really a lot of data around us. The TB program had the data, the HIV program had data, malaria had their own data, hepatitis had their own data, but we couldn't really trust the data in a way where we can say, okay, if this is what the data is telling me, then I can actually trust it and I can base my decision based on the data. And there was a lot of doubt on the reports and the algorithms behind how these reports were generated from those data. So, and then another thing that emerged since then was artificial intelligence, and people were asking about, oh, can we buy artificial intelligence? Can Google tell us more about this or Amazon? So we thought that we needed to inform the community on what artificial intelligence is all about, what is the trend all about, what are its benefits, and is it really something that you can go straight into, or do you need to have the prerequisite foundational components first? And we realized that yes, you needed to have foundational components, and these must be established in sequence. So the goal of the chapter was to develop an easy to remember method for digital transformation. So the framework is actually A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but in reverse. So we start with letter G, And we propose that we should start with governance. What is governance? That there should be a clear decision-making body that will evaluate the needs of the relevant stakeholders and set directions. So three things: a decision-making body, stakeholders, and directions. So in any group that would like to do digital transformation, especially in healthcare, we need to define who is the decision-making body for healthcare in the Philippines, for example, who are the stakeholders of health in that country and what are the needs of those stakeholders. And third, after understanding the needs of those stakeholders, how do we set directions so that we can address the needs of those stakeholders? So in most organizations, this is the board of directors and or senior management, especially in private sector. But in government, this would probably be the ministers of health or the secretaries of health uh, in the different countries. So armed with the strategy, the board of directors or senior management then give clear directives to the rest of the organization and tell them, hey guys, this is our vision, this is our strategy, this is how we will use information technology to improve healthcare. For example, to decrease maternal death, to decrease infant mortality, to decrease HIV infection rate, to increase uh, registration of our citizens in health insurance. Those are the types of strategy that will come from the top. And those need to be stated explicitly in the strategy of this decision-making body. This is very important because this prioritization gives focus to the different stakeholders in the country. You know, in the country, there are many stakeholders in healthcare. There are the healthcare facilities. There are the healthcare workers inside those healthcare facilities. There are the pharmaceutical companies. There are blood banks. There are insurance companies. So the more stakeholders you have in any system, the more complex it becomes, and it becomes very chaotic. And therefore, there needs to be a clear body that sets directions when you have such an environment where you have many stakeholders and many components in an information system. So the WHO ITU National eHealth Strategic Toolkit provides this framework, and it has 7 components. At the top, you can see leadership and governance, strategy and investment, legislation, policy and compliance, and workforce. And as you can see in the red rectangle, those are the other 3 components that need to be built systematically, one on top of the other. At the bottom layer, you should have good infrastructure. Over that good infrastructure, you then set up your standards for interoperability. Once you have your standards and interoperability built on top of the infrastructure, then you encourage your stakeholders to develop services and applications. Okay. The challenge is if you immediately go to services and applications without standards and interoperability, the chances of data being very useful becomes small because all of these services and applications, electronic medical records, health management information systems are using different terms and different standards. So the way they can exchange data is very, very limited. And so this red rectangle needs to be built in a systematic way, like a building block. Infrastructure first, and then standards and interoperability, and then services and applications. So this is a strong message coming from the WHO and ITU. For those who are not familiar, ITU is the UN agency in charge for information technology, while WHO is the UN agency in charge for healthcare. Okay, so what's the important to do when it comes to governance? You have to formalize your structure. Who is this decision-making body? Who is the chair? Who are the members? And where did they get their mandate or authority? And sometimes it can be a law or sometimes it's an administrative order or a circular. Let's look at an example of governance. In the Philippines, this is the current e-health governance structure. So it's clearly set that the health sector is the lead when it comes to e-health, and that's coming from the WHO ITU toolkit. And then the governance is led by the National EHealth Governance Steering Committee. So this is in the Philippines chaired by the Secretary of Health, which is like the Minister of Health in the other countries. And the co-chair is the Minister of ICT. The members of the steering committee are the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Manila. That's the National Health Sciences University. The Philippine Health Insurance Corporation President, the um, Department of Science and Technology, and the Commission on Higher Education. So they are like the ministers and they form the steering committee. They have people supporting them. Each of them will have their own second in command. And this second in command will be those in the National eHealth Technical Working Group. So this technical working group are the ones who will do the technical work on behalf of the ministers. Of course, our ministers are very busy. They set directions and vision, but they do not actually do the hard work. It is done by the technical people. So that's the role of the technical working group. But these technical working group people are directors or vice ministers. They're also very busy. So there's a National eHealth Program Management Office. These are the young people whose job is it to maintain the day-to-day operations of the National eHealth Program. They take down minutes. They call people to meetings. They make sure that there's food and logistics for the meetings. They make sure that the minutes agreements are tracked so that in the next meeting of the technical working group, there's progress between the previous meeting of the technical working group to the next meeting of the technical working group. Now, if you look at the left side and the right side, these are the other groups that the Philippine National eHealth Governance Steering Committee formed based on what they think was needed by the National eHealth leadership and governance. So they did not appear immediately. Some of them appeared early on, like the Health Data Standards Expert Group and the Health Data Security and Privacy Expert Group. But some came out later, like the Privacy Advisors Group, the Capacity Building Task Force, and the Electronic Medical Record Committee, and then the IT Working Group, which are the IT departments of DOH, PhilHealth, the ICT, UP Manila, and the Clinical and Business Process Group for DOH and PhilHealth. So this governance structure is very important. I think that if you don't have the governance structure, it will be very difficult to achieve successful digital transformation. And the reason is there is no body that is taking care of making important decisions for digital transformation. So another part of governance is the decision-making process. As I mentioned, the eHealth Steering Committee is composed of the ministers or the secretaries, and they only meet every quarter, every 3 months. While the technical working group was designated to meet every 2 weeks. And it came to a point where the ministers became very busy. They could not meet anymore every 3 months. And the technical working group had to make decisions, and their decisions could not be resolved because it could only be approved by the ministers and the secretaries. So early on in the structure, the technical working group said, okay guys, why don't we ask the ministers that if we, in the technical working group, representing the different agencies, representing the ministers, if we agree amongst ourselves and we gain consensus, then let's ask them to give us permission to go ahead and implement the decision, our consensus decision. But if we do not reach consensus, then we are compelled to elevate this issue to the steering committee. And if the steering committee has an upcoming meeting, then we will raise it in the upcoming meeting. But if there is no upcoming meeting, then we have the authority to ask the ministers to come together as the steering committee and resolve our lack of consensus. And beautifully, the secretaries of our government, they agreed to this decision-making process. And after this approval, things moved much faster because the technical working group, once they gained consensus, could already proceed and implement their decisions. I remember there was one point where there was no consensus for about 2 consecutive technical working group meetings. So as the representative of the University of the Philippines, Manila, I raised my hand and I told them, okay, I think it is time for us to invoke our mandate to call the secretaries and the ministers to a meeting because we could not reach consensus. You know what happened? The other members of the technical working group said, no, 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 okay, let's talk about this. I think we can find consensus here. So in that meeting, we were able to find consensus. So that's a very important process, so that issues will always come up. It will never go away. There will always be problems. But if we agree on a decision-making process or a framework, then things get resolved up to the point where you might need to get the president or the prime minister to step in. But you have to have this, because if you don't have this, there will be issues and problems that will fester. And if they fester because no one's making decisions about solving them, then that problem will become the impediment to digital transformation. That's letter G. And that letter G is a big word because sometimes governance is very hard to establish in a country. Okay. The next word is F, or framework. Now, governance of many stakeholders with many components is very complex. So our suggestion is that it might be good if you had a framework for the governance. And there are many models that you can use. You can have ISO 38500. You can have COVID-5. They have a new version called COVID 2019, but it rhymes with COVID 2019, so they're still using COVID-5. And ISO TR 14639. And there are many other frameworks that you can adopt. I think my suggestion is that it's better to have a framework than not to have a framework. So you can either choose 38,500, COVID-5, or 14639, or whatever you want, but you should have one because this is very complex. Digital transformation requires many stakeholders, and if you don't have a framework, people will lose their way. Okay. So this is ISO 38500. Actually, it's part of COVID-5. So basically what it's saying is that there must be a body who does governance. And the governance performs evaluation of the stakeholder needs, sets directions, passes those directions to management. That's the technical working group in the Philippines. The management creates plans, builds what is planned, runs what is built, and monitors the performance of what they run. And because this is e-health, everything is digital, so the digital system is easy to monitor, and you can feedback the monitoring back to the monitoring arm of the governance structure. And therefore, the governance body is able to understand whether their directives are actually delivering the benefits to their stakeholders. So it's a closed loop cycle. COVID 2019 is more complex. If you look at ISO 38500, those 5 boxes at the top, this is ISO 38500. Okay? But what COVID 2019 or COVID-5 is saying is that there are other processes inside a governance framework like COVID 2019 or COVID-5. Okay? So there's planning, there's building, there's running, and there is monitoring. I won't go into the details of COVID 2019 or COVID-5. I like this framework. I use this a lot in my work, and it has helped me understand where are my weaknesses, where are my strengths, and then it also helped me tell my staff, okay, you're in charge of manage risk APO 12, and therefore these are the things you need to do. Okay, if you run a big enterprise like a university or a tertiary medical center, I strongly recommend COVID-5 as your framework. And that's just a hospital. Can you imagine if you're the National EHealth Governance Steering Committee, you have to manage 2,000 hospitals in the Philippines. If you don't have a framework, you will not be able to manage your ecosystem adequately. Okay, let me just show you ISO TR 14639. This is the National EHealth Architecture coming from ISO. It's more complex than COVID 2019. It's very specific for EHealth. But if you look at it, COVID would be somewhere as a subset of this ISO TR 14639. Okay, so this is not part of our topic. This is a completely new topic by itself, and I think we should talk about this at some point in the future. Okay. So 38,500, COVID-5 or COVID 2019, and ISO TR 14639. The next letter after you have a framework is ethics. Because we are working with personally identifiable data in healthcare, we should make sure that we comply with prevailing laws and ethical principles in our country and organization. There are ethical guidelines, and we need to protect the rights of our data subjects. Okay, so there are good clinical practices, and I encourage that before you go to any data analysis, we should be able to adopt ethical practices and guidelines. Once you have your ethical approval, it's time to do good data management. And for good data management, you can go to the Data Management Book of Knowledge by the Data Management Association. Over here in this book, you can see standard methodologies for data creation, data definition, data processing, and data destruction. I won't reinvent the wheel. This group has created the methodology for data management already. So these are your standards, and this is where you think about interoperability, because you have standard data sets, then you set yourself up for interoperability later on if everyone uses the standard data set. Your next problem will be, I have so much data, where do I put them? So you need space and you need computing power. And this is where the C or cloud comes in. Once you have defined your data standards, you can start collecting data. But this accumulation of data can happen very fast, and unless your infrastructure is ready, your information system may get clogged or filled up quickly. Cloud technology is flexible enough to accommodate these elastic situations, and cloud provides an adjustable working space for more computational power and or storage space. B is big data. So you have a cloud system, very good. Now you're accumulating data. We're collecting it in a very fast way that's high velocity. It's taking up a lot of space, it's high volume, and it's made up of different data formats that you anticipated when you were at the data management phase, and that's high variety. So velocity, volume, and variety are the definitions of big data. And once you have big data, that is your corpus or body of data, that's where you start your machine learning methodologies, where you can apply these techniques and develop human-like thinking and inference. And this now you get your best value because you've reached artificial intelligence. From this big data, using machine learning, you now have artificial intelligence. And if you manage it well, your AI can provide insight to the organization, which was not previously possible with simple human analysis. These insights should be reverted back to support the decision-making process of the board or the senior management. Remember the monitor arm that goes back to governance, because AI should feed back into governance. If you don't feed back into governance, it is a failed artificial intelligence project. In summary, governance bodies must make a decision to adopt frameworks. They can start with compliance to ethical principles, followed by good data management. Once they have clear sets standards for data management, they combine it with cloud technology and start accumulating big data, and this sets them up for success for their artificial intelligence. Proceeding immediately into artificial intelligence without ensuring the foundations are in place will be prone to failure. So again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G in reverse. Thank you very much. Back to you, Dr. Phil.
Thank you, Dr. Alvin. And next, our session is our reactor session. And next, let's hear from Cambodia, the perspective and experience or opinion, please, Dr. Sambath.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Alvin, for your great presentation. And this is very important. So every country need that guidance to apply. And in Cambodia also, so far we have only National Health Information System. But right now, Ministry of Health also initiated for develop the EHealth plan that we call Digital Health Strategy Plan for 2026 and 30, but still in the process. and the work still a delay because we have the COVID situation, and then Ministry of Health busy with addressing the COVID-19, so that the development still delay. So we hope when we start this, and then we can apply like a framework and some concept as Dr. Alvin presented, so that. So from this guidance, any you are also say in Philippines, but other in Asia region apply this framework or not yet? Any example good practice so far? So,
I'd like to say Philippines because I'm part of the governance body of the technical working group. So I know that Myanmar, I don't know if Dr. Win Minhan is familiar, they attempted to do this. Maybe Dr. Win Minhan later on for Myanmar can tell us more about their experience. I know Thailand, Dr. Pham, have not yet established the governance body. When I say governance body, it's more like the multi-sectoral membership. You know, like there's the Ministry of Health, Ministry of ICT, the academe, and the other government agencies, and of course also inviting the private sector. I don't know if Dr. Fazila is in the call. I think she's in another call. I know the Ministry of Health in Malaysia has standards, and they ask the private sector to follow the standards, but it varies between countries how they apply the governance.
and the next one, could you explain more about the big data? So what level that we can say that big data, and also you mentioned about the analysis. So with the big data, what approach that could analyze and produce the statistics?
Yeah, so big data is basically data that you've collected from different sources. So it could be the malaria data, the HIV data, it could be electronic medical record data. A very popular data set right now is COVID-19 data. So these are huge data sets. And once you have that data set, it's not really very useful until you analyze it, Dr. Sambath. So that's why we're encouraging our AeHIN members to participate in the MIT data science course this November 2. Because in the MIT data science course, you will learn different techniques to manage big data. And in that course, MIT will provide for us a big data set. These are the data set that they accumulated in the hospital, the ICU. So they have monitor data, they have electronic medical record data, they have electrophysiological data, and that's going to be our big data for that course on November 2. So in advance, I'm inviting everyone to join that course. I know Dr. Kalimag has formed a team. I think there are at least 5 teams from the Philippines, and I think in Thailand, KKU, Kongken University is forming their own teams. I encourage in Cambodia, Dr. Sambath, maybe your group can form one team because big data is not very useful until you analyze it. And the analysis, you need to know how to do it. And according to Dr. Leo Selly of MIT, you should not leave the analysis of big data to IT people alone because you need to have health people to work together with the IT people so that the IT people, when they do the analysis, they are guided by the health professionals. Dr. Sambath.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all from me. Over to others. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sambath. And then let's hear from Myanmar point of view, and please, Dr. Win Minhan.
Thank you, Dr. Pham. Thank you, Dr. Alvin, for this important talk. It's also interesting to see the components of artificial intelligence in there, although it's very lag behind for the developing countries like Myanmar at the moment. Myanmar has released its strategic action plan for the strengthening of health information 2017-2021, which was signed by the Minister of the Ministry of Health and Sports, released in July 2017. In the plan, the minister wrote, and I quote, "Dynamic, robust, and efficient health information system is a very basic prerequisite for the functioning of the healthcare delivery system. It can be equated to the nervous system of the body. So our minister compared the health information system as a brain of the body, which releases and control all the peripheral system and also decision makings and other important procedures. So the national e-health environment of the Myanmar, which is made out of the 7 components of the WHO toolkit that Dr. Alvin has mentioned in his first few slides. Those components have been considered in drafting the detail of the strategic action plan for this report. It is also mentioned in the national strategic plan that the most challenging issue is to establish the sufficient political will and also the leadership and the institutional capacity, and also including the supportive policy and regulatory environment, and most importantly, the good governments is also mentioned in the report as well. And other key challenges, including the health information organization setup, which is the government is at the central level, which is require a lot of work had to be done at the very peripheral level or the executional levels. And also the other challenges, including the lack of written health information policies, which would include the data security, confidentiality, and dissemination. And I saw one question in the chat box about that. So we don't actually have the written regulations, or maybe I'm not aware of for that data security issue at the moment. And the challenges also include the weak ID infrastructure, and also including networking and the non-standardized medical records, and the low awareness on the importance of health information and record keeping. And most importantly, the health information system is under-resourced and the investment was scarce. So the contribution for the national health information system was made by a lot of agencies and NGOs, including USAID, WHO, UNICEF, and also the World Bank, the government of Japan, and several agencies have been helping to guide this national health information strategic plan, which leads to 12 strategic areas that they propose, including the population-based surveys, planning and training of HMIS management, the civil registration and the vital statistics, and so forth. So if you can, you can download it as a PDF file in the internet for this strategic plan if you're interested. And I guess my time is up.
Can you share it in the chat box? Thank you. Very important. I know I heard the minister in 2017, he talked about that policy. So it's good that it's written up and it's available. Actually, I'm very impressed with your infrastructure because in 2017, from Yangon to Naypyidaw, that's 4 hours.
Right.
I had very good internet connection on my mobile phone, which I could not still today achieve in the Philippines. You know, you have very good infrastructure. Okay.
Yeah. If you say the Yangon and Naypyidaw, probably yes, but the other regions might be, different stories.
Yes.
So yeah, right.
Yeah. Can you share the PDF of the policy? Also, I have a confession to make. Okay, I will show you slides, Dr. Win Minhan, because you might think everything was rosy in the Philippines. But as a matter of fact, let me tell you, in the first 6 months, when we had our governance structure, the reality is we were not really working very well. You know why? Because we only had the steering committee and the technical working group. These are the ministers and these are the directors. There was no program management office. And in the technical working group, everyone was like a director. They were very busy. No one had time to write invitations, make sure that the room is available, make sure that every technical working group member is ready to make a report. No one was taking down minutes because all of them were like boss already. They're directors level. And so earlier on, we realized, we need to have people, young people, to be our program management office. Because there are different projects in the Ministry of Health, in the Ministry of ICT, but these projects need to come together, right? The infrastructure project was with the Ministry of ICT. The standards for health project was with the Ministry of Health. And the services and applications might be with the Ministry of Economics or the Ministry of Business. So it had to be, there had to be young people in each of the ministry, and these young people together will form the program management office. I think that's where development partners can really help out. If the development partners can support that program management office, then the technical working group will have the young people that can support them on a daily basis. Things like writing down minutes, tracking the performance of the other ministries, and then informing the other ministries of what's happening. That's what's important. So for the first 6 months, we did not have this. So you might think this came out of the box on day one. No, this is the structure maybe after 1 year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that we definitely can learn something from that, Dr. Alvin. Thank you. Yeah, that's the end of my reaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Win Minhan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Win Minhan and Dr. Alvin. And next, let's hear from Lao Perspective and Experience. Please, Dr. Thepphouthone.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Pham, and thank you, Dr. Alvin. Nice to meet you. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for your interesting presentation. According to your presentation, as read, I understand that this content is really relevant to my country, Lao PDR, because we will hosting the conversion workshop in December this year to guide the e-health transformation, especially the like your presentation is the e-health leadership and government, and also the e-health strategy from 2021 to 2025. It's really important for us to start the e-health transformation. And secondly, it's really useful to have the stepwise approach to guide the digital health transformations, particularly for the low resource country like Laos and ASEAN countries. And the third, for the area of the AI in health is the certainly need to be embraced in the faster pace to given the challenge country are facing in delivering the healthcare among the pandemic like COVID-19, particularly decision support system that could support like telemedicine would be the top value of the AI. And the last, I think, for the data visualization is really important because it has been going rapidly right now in the recent year, and certainly is providing to the between data personnel to the decision maker in making the decision in healthcare. I don't have the question, but I would like to learn from you more about the e-health leadership and the government. I think it's really important for our PDR to develop the next 5-year strategy or 10-year strategy, because now the national structure is not clear in Laos. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorsavan. Nice to meet you. will support your convergence workshop. Just let us know. Send us an email, and we will help you out there. I think it's a very important first activity to get all the other ministries to support the Ministry of Health. I think that's what we found that has been very successful in other countries like Bhutan, Myanmar, Vietnam. The convergence workshop, for those who are in the call who don't know about it, is where all the different ministries, we invite them to converge and support the Ministry of Health. Because remember, in the WHO ITU National eHealth Strategy Toolkit, eHealth is led by the Ministry of Health. But it's very difficult for the Ministry of Health to do it alone because they need help with infrastructure, and the infrastructure with Ministry of ICT. Sometimes they need help with insurance, but insurance is with the Ministry of Finance. Sometimes they will need help with national identification or national citizen ID, and that is
Yes.
Home Affairs. So to make the e-health work, they need the support of all the other ministries. And that's what the Converge Workshop does. In that meeting, uh, the inviter is the Ministry of Health, and then all the ministries will be invited, and then we will tell them about this is the governance, this is COVID-5, the ministry will talk and ask the other ministries, we want this digital help, but we need your help. And so I think, mostly after the convergence workshop, that's the time they form the governance body. Yes, because now they realize, okay, we like to support the Ministry of Health, so we will join you and participate in the digital health transformation. So I wish you good luck, and if you need AeHIN to help out through online presence or if you think we need to fly in, just let us know. Thank you.
Sure. We need the AeHIN to help us to organize
Sure.
to get the good result. Yeah, I will.
Just send us an email, and we will
Okay.
find people to fly over there and help out. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Alvin.
Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Alvin and Dr. Thepphouthone. And next, let's hear from Vietnam. Please, Dr. Pham.
Thank you, Dr. Alvin, with the valuable presentation. And I want, based on your presentation, I want to comment and to sharing the experience of the Vietnam. And the first in the governance level, I think the national e-health structure is very good for implement in e-health is a national level, but because all the people in the national structure is not just only work for the e-health, they also for many work to do. So that's not focus on the work in the e-health development. And the difference of the Vietnam is the COVID-5, we think is just applied for the enterprise, and if the COVID-5 is applied for the government, it's difficult to implement it. I think it's a problem of the institution of the government body. And the second, in the ethics in Vietnam, we have a law, a general law for the security and the network security law. But in the e-health, we don't have a law, a guideline for the data security and privacy and health data privacy and health data privacy and health data security is difficult for us, because now we implement an electronic health record, national electronic health record, and we don't have any data guidelines for the protect the private data from the citizen in the electronic health record is our problem. And if Mr. Alvin can guideline and support us for develop a data protection guideline for Vietnam, I think, and for healthcare, I think it's very good. Is the in the data level. In Vietnam, the health data is on the collecting. We have stats health information, national health information system, and we collect the data on the we collect data on the health facilities, from the grassroots level to the national level. And I think we have enough data for analysis. But the problem in Vietnam now, cloud is not to believe, because I think that the data put on the cloud is not protect and is not in privacy, and we don't want to put the data on the international cloud. For health data is a problem. And in Vietnam, we also have developed the artificial intelligence, but for the group data is not for national or health data. For example, now we develop the artificial intelligence for the image, for the health imaging, for the health image, for the COVID, for analysis, the disease from the image. And I think that in the structure is we think we should revise something. For example, in the governance, I think we should customize the COVID the COVID data, the COVID-5 for the government, because if you apply on the COVID-5 procedure to the government, I think it's difficult. And we think how to put data on the cloud, because now in Vietnam the cloud is not development. We also based on the on-premise system. Is the problem. Yeah, it's now I think is the problem, and is the current status of Vietnam.
Thank you, Mr. Dat. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Mr. Dat is an enterprise architect of the Ministry of Health EHealth Administration.
One problem. That's if you have a national committee, I think we should have a good enterprise architect for healthcare. Or else the national committee cannot control. They don't know how to control the strategy for the e-health development.
Yes.
If they don't have enterprise, good enterprise architecture is a problem.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe we can invite you. You already gave a talk on enterprise architecture as you did it in Vietnam. Maybe another one, so that other countries can see how you do enterprise architecture in Vietnam. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
Right. In another night. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pham Thanh Dat, and thank you, Dr. Alvin. And next, let's hear from Mr. Lauro, please.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. I'm not going to turn on my camera because I'm still in my pajamas, and it's about 6 o'clock in the morning here, so please bear with me. Thank you, Dr. Alvin, for your presentation. It's very illuminating, and thank you again for inviting the Pacific Health Information Network to participate in these webinars. We certainly want to get to a point where AeHIN is right now, with having all these dynamic activities serving its members. So we're very, very happy to be a partner of AeHIN. So for the Pacific region, where most of the countries are still paper-based or running a hybrid system of both digital and manual, the concept of artificial intelligence seems to be a very far reality. But the thing is, as we can see, especially during the pandemic, a lot of these technology is maturing everywhere around the world. But perhaps maybe I can just talk about the concept of digital transformation. Digital transformation is a topic that we have been discussing for several decades. Even when I remember starting the workforce several years ago. But because the concept of transformation is so abstract, it has been very, very difficult to grasp and therefore very difficult to adopt and execute. So thank you for putting these approaches in understandable, tidy packages and sequences. But we all know that the real world problems are not linear or come in tidy packages. And so there's something that I would really like to pick up on your model, which I've learned so much just in the last half an hour. If there's something that we can learn out of COVID-19, it would really be the issue of ethics, particularly putting to test the issue of individual data privacy around surveillance and contact tracing. Or another example is, how do we support the vaccine introduction to the mass population, and how do we track the population, again, using digital tools. If there's one comment that I would like to add is I would put the ethics equally on the same page or the same level as governance, because the ethical principles that countries adopt should serve as a guidepost for the type of decisions, policies, or regulations that come out of the governing body, or perhaps even defining the type of people that should make up the governing body. So that's it for me. I know we're running out of time. So thank you so much, Dr. Alvin, for giving us the opportunity from the Pacific to participate in the AeHIN webinars.
Thank you, Lauro. Thank you. I think, I agree. I mean, if we can put E before G, we should even put E before G, because ethics is the foundational aspect of why we govern over our people. I just made it simple, so it's just reverse alphabet. And so while you're there, Laura, I was thinking that maybe the Pacific Health Information Network and the Asia EHealth Information Network, we can have a inter-network meeting on what would be our joint call to action moving forward with COVID 2019, because I think it's very difficult for a single country to solve this problem. It's not possible for a region to solve this problem all by them. It's a global effort, and I think the inter-network approach will make the information dissemination much faster. So I hope we can have another meeting about this, Laura. AeHIN and PHIN.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Alvin.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Pham, I think it's the top of the hour.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Alvin and Sir Lauro. I think some questions in the chat box, Dr. Alvin and the reactors already answered it. So I think it's time to close the session. And thank you to our participants for joining tonight, and thank you for speaker and reactors today. Would you like to give us a closing session, Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
A closing message.
Thank you, Dr. Alvin, and thank you.
Final words for alphabet, because your alphabet is your guide to your digital transformation.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.